And so I just thought, if I'm nice, they're going to kill me. If I'm nasty, they're going to kill me. Well, I'm just going to go down fighting. And so I was very abusive and aggressive. And the harder I pushed them, the nicer they were. And they would say, "Why are you angry? You are our guest. You are our sister." Hamid had to translate my words. And one day he said to me, "I am terrified of these people, and you should be as well. And it's not nice for me to translate your words. I get scared." On the 6th day, Hamid came to see me, and his face was nearly black with fear. His mouth was so dry he could hardly talk. And he said, "You have a very important visitor." And I said, "Who is it?" He said, "I can't tell you, but you must be respectful." I said, "Well, who is it? Is it Mullah Omar?" And he said, "Please, just be respectful. You have to show some respect. This is a very, very important person." So I'm thinking, I wonder who it can be. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Although I was the prisoner, I had my own key. And so I unlocked the door, opened it. Hamid stood aside, and there in front of me was a man who made my blood run cold. The hair on the back of my neck lifted. For 6 days I had avoided talking about religion, and there in front of me was a religious cleric, a Maulana. And everything in Afghanistan is dirty, ripped and torn and dusty. He was wearing an immaculate ivory gown, one which went right down to the ground. The Taliban's clothes were above their ankles. This guy's clothes were right down to the ground. You couldn't see his feet. And he had a great big ivory turban. A very modest beard by Afghan standards. Very light brown, modest beard. And light brown eyes. And he had beads which he moved, like rosary beads, which he moved 2 at a time. And there was something else about him that I thought was weird. And when I mentioned it to my first Muslim crowd, a few of them went, "Alhamdulillah." When I told them, I said there was something really weird about this guy. He had a shine on his face. It was like a light on the inside coming out. I've never seen anything like it before. And I was told by my Muslim friends back in London, this is the nur, the light that comes out of somebody who is very pious, very practicing, a very good person. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought there's something weird and spooky about this guy. After I recovered, I moved aside and invited him into my room. And he was so graceful and elegant, he didn't even seem to walk. He just glided in and glided down. And I sat opposite him, and Hamid acted as the translator. And he said, "What is your religion?" And I thought, oh, here we go. I said, "I'm a Christian." He said, "Yes, but what sort of Christian? Are you a Roman Catholic? Are you a Protestant?" I said, "I'm a Protestant from the Church of England." And he's smiling and moving his beads. And he said, "And what do you think of Islam?" "Oh," I said, "it's fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful." Of course, I knew nothing about Islam, very little, and the little that I knew was totally wrong as it turned out. And I went off in praise for 2 minutes of this faith that I knew so little about. And he smiled and he moved his beads. And then when I finally stopped running out of adjectives, he said, "Islam is a beautiful religion." I couldn't agree more. And then again, I ran off in praise of Islam. And he smiled as he listened, and Hamid translated. And I said, do you know, the people around here are so passionate about their faith that they pray 5 times a day. I know because I've watched and counted it. And he looked. He must have thought, you stupid woman. But I didn't realize that Muslims are expected to pray 5 times a day. So he moved his beads. And then he said, so, you would like to convert? And I thought, he's led me into a blind alley here. If I say, yes, I'll convert, he'll accuse me of being fickle and insincere, and he'll say, take her away and have her stoned. If I say, no, I'm not interested, he'll say, how dare you insult Islam, take her away and have her stoned. So I'm trying to come up with the right answer. And then, in the end, I said, look, I can't make such a life-changing decision while I'm in prison. But if you let me go, I promise I will read the Quran and I will study Islam. And he smiled, and he didn't say anything more. And he rose up, and he glided out. Hamid went scuttling after him. And he returned a few minutes later, and he said, you're going home on a red crescent plane. Well, I punched the air and congratulated myself for having dealt with this Malana, this religious man, in such a clever way. And within a few minutes, the little goods that I had accrued were in a plastic bag, and off I was in a truck heading for Kabul. 7 hours later, after a dusty, bumpy ride, we came into Kabul and drove straight past the airport. But I was okay. I just thought, well, there are other Westerners being held by the Taliban. We're probably going to pick them up. All I know is that I'm going home on a red crescent plane. That night, I was to find out another aspect to the character of the Afghan people. They don't like giving you bad news. They don't like telling you anything that will upset you or cause an adverse reaction. And so we drove past the airport, and then we pulled into a really grim prison. Everything that you would imagine a third world prison to be. And I was asked to get out, and I got out, and we walked down this dark, dingy corridor, and then they pushed open this little metal door with a little spy hole in it. And there, sitting on a concrete floor, were 2 Afghan women, one with a babe in arms and the other one heavily pregnant. And they said, tonight you will stay here. And I said, no, you've made a mistake. I am going home on a red crescent plane. Of course, the thing is, when you lead someone on, you have to deliver the bad news at some point. And so the bad news was delivered to me then. You're going nowhere. You were a bad woman. You entered our country illegally without a passport. You have to be punished. I screamed and shouted. There was no way I was going to go into this cell. And to get me out and get me to the airport. And I said to them, you can't do this to me. I'm British. And they smiled. Just then, another cell door opened, and 6 women wearing hijabs came out. And one of them said to me, are you from the Red Cross? I said, you speak English? And she said, well, I'm Australian. These 3 are Germans, and the other 2 are Americans. And I went, oh my God, you're the Christians, the charity workers who were locked up for trying to convert Muslims to Christianity. And they said yes. And I said, look, there's been a terrible mistake. I'm supposed to be going home on a red crescent plane. Will you tell these people? And the women all spoke the language. And I could tell by the heated conversation and the expressions on everyone.